Fantastic. So good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world. I can see that there are people logged in from many places in the world. Thank you very much for giving us your time. Time is obviously very, very precious in all of our lives and what we decide to do with that time. So welcome to the 8th session of the Foresight Lectures. My gosh, that seems like it was only a month or two ago when we decided to do this. So we're very happy to be introducing another incredible speaker for you today, and I'll introduce you to him in just a moment. Before I do that, for those of you who are unfamiliar with who we are as a company, if you could just bear with me and give me 2 minutes of your time, just so that I can give you a brief overview of who we are and what we do. The Alpha Group is a peer-to-peer executive board organization. Now, it's not a standalone company. We are actually a division of a larger organization called Noble Manhattan Coach Training. Noble Manhattan Coach Training is in the top 3 of coach training companies in the world. Now, depending on who's counting, we're either first, second, or third, but we've always been in the top 3. It all depends on the amount of students and coverage and footprints that we leave around the world. Now, we started the Alpha Group about 9 years ago, but only in the UK at that particular time. And we set up multiple boards in and around the southern part of the United Kingdom. What we were trying to do there is to see that what we were going to share with the wider population of the world worked, to make sure that it was fit for purpose, if you like, if beta testing it. So we were checking our processes, we were checking the content, we were making sure we've got it right down to what it is that we needed to do to fulfill the promise that we give to our members. And we actually only give one promise to our members. And that is, if they work with us over a period of 2 to 3 years, we will double the value of their business. And to date, we have never failed to do that. And hopefully that will continue to be the case. So what is it that we do within the Alpha Group? Well, the Alpha Group is a peer-to-peer organization where we invite business owners like yourselves to attend a monthly meeting. And in that monthly meeting, we look at some of the strategies that you as a business owner, as a business leader, should actually have in operation within your business. Now, I'd like to think many of these strategies are already in place, and we can test that by, again, using some of the processes and methods that we use within the Alpha Group. We look also at individual challenges and problems and opportunities that our members are actually presented with on a daily, weekly, monthly, annual basis. And we help you to come up with solutions, different solutions to what you maybe would have thought about in the past. Our boards are made up of no more than 20 individual businesses from different industry sectors with no competing industry within the room. Now, for 2 reasons. Firstly, you wouldn't open up if you have a competitor in the room. So we want to make sure that there is an opportunity for you to share your deepest, darkest challenge, problem, opportunity. And of course, you would do that if you had a competitor in the room. But a stronger, compelling reason why we want to build the boards of independent industries is that we want different ideas, different perspectives on the same problem coming into the table. Learning how different industries deal with some of the problems of running a business, by opening up that opportunity and that experience that we have within our boards to everyone who's sitting around our table. And in some of our boards that get to that stage where they have 20 members, they would actually have over 400 years of business knowledge and experience that they can tap into on a monthly basis. So that's pretty much what we do within the Alpha Group. If you would like more information, please do try and make contact with me, and I will happily share more information and have a coffee on Zoom with you. Or please go back to the regional director that introduced you to today's meeting. I'm very sure that they will be happy to dive deeper into how we actually help businesses like yours to grow and to develop. So moving forward then onto our speaker today. I'd like to introduce you to a wonderful, wonderful speaker, and his name is Frank Croswell. Frank is the managing director of Wilson Learning based in South Africa. He actually has over 30 years of consultancy and facilitating experience in pretty much what would be multicultural environments. Frank has helped major companies improve things like company and individual performance in areas of leadership, in sales, and individual effectiveness across a large section of industries. Frank has actually been working with his magic, if you like, in over 65 countries around the world. And I have to say that's spread over 4 continents. I'm wondering which continent you're not working yet in, Frank. Maybe you'll share that with us. But that is an incredible track record and gives you the depth and world of knowledge and experience. And I'm so happy to have you with us today on the Foresight Lectures. So with no further ado, Frank, if I can hand it over to you, and we look forward to listening to your experience and knowledge on your presentation. Thank you very much, Frank.
Thank you, Colin. I just want to do a reality check. Can you hear me, Colin?
Perfectly, absolutely.
Okay.
Perfectly.
Well, everybody, thank you very much for taking the time today to come and what we like to call lunch and learn sessions, which usually last between 45 and an hour, 45 minutes and an hour. And they are to stimulate your thinking and to give you some skills and tactics and strategies to do real business work. We are not talking about tricks and funny techniques. We're talking about a strategy that will help you to negotiate better. So that's the intention of this afternoon, this morning, or this evening's session, and I'm going to dive into it right away. So here we go. The purpose of negotiation is threefold. It's first of all, you want both parties to feel that they have had their needs and interests dealt with and satisfied. That is extremely important. It's not one wins and the other one loses, but both benefit from the interaction together. The second one is to follow a process. And I'll make this point very clearly, that many people come along and talk about, here's some tricks and techniques to be a good negotiator. We believe that there is a process to follow, not a straitjacket, but a process that allows you to cover those issues that are important for both parties to win in the end. And the last element, as you can see on the slide, is how do we maintain the relationship between the two parties so that we can do additional business? Because I found over the years that many companies, they believe they are negotiating, but one party loses and the other party wins, and they never see each other again. In most of the companies that we work with, we have been working with them in some cases for over 30 years. A company like Caterpillar, I've worked with them in 56 countries, and we continue to work with them, and it's well over 20 years that we've been working with them. So we don't believe in short-term negotiations. We believe in building the relationship that contributes to the ongoing sharing of ideas and to the benefit of both parties. So that's fundamental. The process we're going to talk about is principled negotiation. So again, I have worked extensively in countries that are regarded as being rather corrupt. And one of the things that has stood me in good stead is that I have always stuck to the principle of principled negotiation, that don't take anything that doesn't belong to you and don't give anything that doesn't belong to anybody else. And that is the fundamental sort of ground swell, if you like, of our whole approach to negotiation. It must be completely above board. As far as the three areas that we'll focus on are concerned, the first one is aligning the people. And the way we like to describe that is separate the people from the problem, be hard on the problem, soft on the people. So remember, we talked about building relationships. Exactly. make sure that those relationships are built on sound foundations and that the people involved in the negotiation are aligned. The next one is explore the interests and issues of each party. What often happens is people jump in too quickly with solutions and they don't explore the issues in great depth. And so we will talk about that a little bit. And then how do we reach agreement which is going to be binding but also lasting? And so that's what we're going to be talking about for the next 45 minutes or so. Then, as far as what you take away, you'll take away a process for better negotiated agreements. You'll take some tools and you'll take some strategies that are going to be dealt with relatively superficially in this short period of time, but will maybe titillate your fancy to look a little more deeply into the way you currently conduct your negotiations. And then finally, in terms of a payoff, is you want to increase your own company's margins and you want to build and maintain strong relationships with your clients or your colleagues or whoever you negotiate with. So I hope that sets the theme for what we're going to be talking about over the next few minutes. Just a quick poll for all of you, if you care to take it. I'm not going to stop. If you want to record your percentage on the chat, do so with pleasure. But one of the things that I want to bring to your attention, that you will be surprised that you underestimate the amount of time that you actually negotiate. So if you care to make a comment or just put a percentage in the chat if you wish to. If you don't, that's okay as well. I'll give you just a few seconds to do that. Okay, so some of you will have recorded your responses. Thank you very much for doing that. Our global research indicates that most business people spend between 75 and 90% of their time negotiating. They negotiate about where they're going to meet, who they're going to meet with, what they're going to talk about, and so on and so forth. So there's no doubt that in a business setting, whether you're a sales executive or whether you're a business owner, you are negotiating with your staff, you're negotiating with your colleagues, you're negotiating with customers, you're negotiating with suppliers, and that's an ongoing basis. So it's an important life skill, the ability to negotiate, and I hope you all agree with that. So thanks for putting your percentages in, and I hope you sort of think about it and think about how you can utilize your skills, the skills that we're going to talk about during the next short while, that will help you to be more effective as you negotiate with your colleagues. The first thing I want to mention to you is that a lot of people confuse bargaining with principled negotiation. Bargaining, as you will see from the diagram, indicates that if one person wins, the other person loses. And that means that you've got a fixed pie and somebody is going to win, and the stronger your bargaining power, the more likely it is that you will get more than your fair share. And that's not the way that we see negotiation taking place at all. What we see is looking at that curve on the top right-hand side of the diagram, which says principled negotiation, says most times there are a whole lot of things that can be negotiated. So particularly when we talk about business negotiation, you often hear people talk about price all the time. I just want to bring to your attention that a company like Caterpillar, which is their prices of their machines are something like 24% higher than the competition, still have over 65% of most markets that they trade in. So if it was price, they would not be surviving. It's because they offer and they show value, which is on that curve on the right-hand side. So we're going to talk about that along the way as well. Right, so let's define what we mean by negotiation. It's a two-way street, if you like. It's communicating backwards and forwards to share our interests and to share what we are, maybe what we agree on and what we are have as opposing views. And so we're going to look at that situation. And then our goal is, again, I come back to satisfying the interest, looking at an effective process, and then strengthening the relationship. Keep your eye on the prize. That's what you need to do. Keep your eye on the prize. The prize is both parties are satisfied. There's a process that both parties have agreed to and works for them, and they strengthen the ongoing relationship. So that's where we start. This is the journey we're going to take. The first, at the top, you will see that preparation and planning is critical. I'm sure most of you have heard the saying, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And we agree with that in terms of negotiation. And I have many, many, many examples of where people have failed to plan and have been taken to the cleaners when they get into the negotiating room. So there's no question about preparing and planning for the negotiation. Then, as we said, there are 3 steps in the process. First, align the people. And I said, separate the people from the problem and be hard on the problem, soft on the people. And the 2 skills we're going to talk about are how do you draw up a stakeholder map and how do you step to their side, show empathy for what's important for the other party. Excuse me, what is important for the other party. The second step is focus on the interest, not the position, not what they say they want, but what they really want. So identifying the interest, generating options for mutual gain, and then if there is conflict on issues of difference, how do we find a standard that both parties defer to that is not your will or my will, but we both agree that that's a good independent standard or principle that we can both defer to. And then finally, we've got creating that mutually satisfactory agreement. And I don't know whether any of you know or have heard of BATNA, but BATNA stands for the best alternative to a negotiated agreement. So what am I going to do if I can't reach an agreement right now? And it's a really key skill, particularly in your preparation. And then the last point on the list is how do I make a yesable offer that will entice the person to enter into agreement with me, and that agreement will last to the mutual benefit of both parties. So that's the journey we'll go on. So let's look at the stakeholder map. In any negotiation, whether you're sitting at a table or whether you're on a conference call, you have your stakeholders and the other party has his or her stakeholders or group of stakeholders. Remembering that sometimes those people may be hostile to you. And so it's very important to understand who is at the table or is influencing the people who are at the negotiating table, whether it be virtual or whether it be in reality across a table. So stakeholder mapping, critical skill. And we have a tool to help people to map who is going to be at the meeting, who are the likely influences that are not necessarily in the room, and particularly in difficult situations where there might be consultants involved who have interests that are not in your best interest. Then the second one is step to their side. And the first part of stepping to their side is making sure that you have a good way of introducing what's going to happen during the meeting. And so you'll notice that I use that very technique myself. It says, why are we meeting? And don't assume that the other party knows why they're meeting or that all the parties sitting at the table are at Eden as to what is going to be discussed during the negotiation. So it's worthwhile clarifying the purpose of the meeting, and there's an example there. The next one is, how will we proceed? So again, what are you doing? You actually are negotiating on how you are going to talk about the issue that you're negotiating about. So you're getting small agreements even before you start talking about the substantive issues of the negotiation. And then the one I like very much indeed is, how will we benefit? How will we both benefit? Not you or me, but both of us. So it's a joint problem solving, a joint negotiation to meet the needs and expectations of both parties. So if you do nothing else as a result of attending today, please look at having a purpose for your meeting that you articulate early on in the process, clarify the process that will be followed, and then clarify for both parties and get agreement on what the benefits of the negotiated agreement will be for both parties. Extremely powerful. And I really commend it to you, and please try and use it where you can. Then other techniques, and I'm not going to dive into them in great detail, or other techniques you can use to make sure that you understand what's important to the other party is on that scale, on that little diagram. And the one that I want to focus on is accumulating yeses. A lot of people wait for the final moment to get a yes. What we are recommending is that all the way along throughout the negotiating process, you should be looking for small yeses. Are you happy with what we've discussed so far? Are you happy to move on to the next point? Are you happy that we are, and whatever it is, to accumulate the yeses? Very important. And then the other one that is most important is that you express your views without provoking. A lot of people get antagonistic when they seem to be losing their case. You can express your particular point of view, and you're entitled to do so in the negotiation, but please value the people's integrity and also respect them in such a way that you don't provoke them into a battle. So those are the two I like to focus on. On the other side, there are a couple of other ideas. And of course, listening is a critical skill in any negotiation. So there are a couple of ideas. Again, if we go to the next piece of the puzzle, we talk about identifying interests. And I'm going to show you a little diagram. There are two people sitting in a library. The one person goes across to the window and opens the window wide. And immediately one of the other members sitting in the library goes across and slams the window shut. Now, the position is the one wants the window open and the other one wants the window closed. But we don't know why. So if we look a little deeper, the one that wants the window open is looking for fresh air. And the one that wants the window closed has a lot of papers that they're busy with, and they're blowing about, and they don't want that draft, so they want the window closed. So if we say closed window, open window, we don't know what the real interests are. Once we know what the real interests are, we can find innovative ways of solving the problem. And there's a classic example that's brought up by William Urey, the professor at Harvard University, who says that one of the librarians agreed that opening a window in an adjoining area would provide some fresh air, but would not cause a draft directly onto the paper. So by knowing what the issues are, or the interests are, you can answer the question, why do you want it, not what it is that you want, and then you can get that unstated need. Because most people articulate what their positions are, but you have to draw them out in terms of what their interests are. Very, very important. And we need to have a questioning strategy and a listening strategy to be able to find out what is the underlying interest, not what the people say they want, but what they really want. So there are three types of interest that we deal with in negotiations on a regular basis. The one is on the top left-hand side is both parties want something to happen. So if we're talking about selling our house and somebody wants to buy the house, there's a common, excuse me, there's a common interest in the house being transferred to the other, from one party to the other. There might be some differences on the top right-hand corner. So the one party might have children that are going to school and they want to be close to public transport, or they want to be close to a school where the children can walk to school. The people who are selling might be coming to the end of their careers and are looking to downsize. And so their interest is downsizing. The other party's interest is being close to amenities or being close to school. But then at the bottom, you will have opposing interests. So the classic one, as we all know, is price. So people say, how did you get to that price? So you want 200,000, 500,000, a million for your property, and I want to pay 800. And so we are going to just touch on that. How do you deal with those interests that are opposing? But the interesting point about it is we should expand the pie, spend more time understanding what interests are shared and the differing interests, and making sure that we deal with those to the satisfaction of both parties, so that when you deal with the one individual or two issues that are opposed, they don't completely dominate the whole conversation. So that is very important. And the differing interest is the area where you can really expand the pie. Because, as I said, if the person wants to be close to schools and amenities, you want to emphasize where your house is in relation to those amenities. If you are somebody who is wanting to downsize, what are you going to talk about? You're going to talk about how we can help you get the cash available so that you can buy a smaller property close to your children or whoever you want to be close to. So you can share and deal with differing ideas to build rapport between the two parties. I hope that's clear to you. But most people focus on the opposing situation, and price often dominates that. So what questions can we use to determine where we stand? And the first one is checking questions. Make sure that you don't make assumptions, because as you know, what assumptions are is you make an ass of me and you. So don't assume anything. Check and again get agreement that you've understood what the other party had in mind, and then uncover additional interests. So there are some ideas which I like very much indeed. The one is tell me more questions. So you shared with me that you've got 3 children that are school-going age. Could you tell me, what grades they're in? Well, one's in high school and 2 are in the prep school. Well, now you've learned some more. So tell me more about that. And so you get to know what's important from the other party's point of view. And then the magic wand questions are questions that allow the person to dream a little bit. So you might say to them, you're looking to buy a house. Could you describe to me what the ideal house for you would look like? And then you keep quiet and let them wax lyrical about what's important to them. And I really found that most interesting, because people, even though they might not be able to obtain everything that they want, at least you get a good understanding of what their aspirations are. And then the one that is absolutely wonderful is a catch-all question. That is, you and I have spoken a lot about our requirements for moving out of this house and you buying a property. Is there something that I neglected to ask you that if I had found out the answer, it would help me to be clearer about what your expectations are. And again, what usually happens is people tell you what you have forgotten to ask them, or that is important to them. Then once you've got a lot of information, you need to clarify with them which interests, you've talked about a lot of interests, which ones are the most critical for you. So again, we want to focus on what's important from the other party's point of view. So some people call it empathy, some people call it putting yourself in the other party's shoes, but it's, that's what it is, prioritizing what your interests are, but also prioritizing what their interests are. Then generating options. Again, once we have the interest clarified, we can start generating options. If you haven't understood the interest, your options may not be pertinent to you and appropriate to your needs, and they definitely might not be appropriate to the other party's needs. So there's no question that identifying interest is critical to being able to generate options. So options are possible agreement that does not exclude other possibilities, and they are negotiable. So when you put forward possibilities or solutions or options, you say, well, here are some things that we could try. What do you think about that? What do you think about this? Not categorically stating this is what we're going to do, putting forward possible ideas that are not exclusive of others. And often what happens is people build on those options. So they might hear something that you never even imagined, and they build on that, and you come up with an option that both parties are excited about, and that neither party might not have come up with in their own right. So very important. So the obstacles of inhibiting generation of options are that we assume that there's a fixed pie. In no negotiation is there a fixed pie. And I've seen thousands of negotiations. I've seen negotiations in the most primitive form of the people of the Kalahari negotiating about water or food resources. And they don't make assumptions about a fixed pie. And then they don't search for a single answer. They look for options, and they don't make premature judgments. And the premature judgments are things like, we tried that in 1923 and it didn't work, or my boss wouldn't like that, and those kind of things. They're making prejudgments when you haven't fully discussed the issue. So those are some things that get in the way, and we need to try and avoid them or to reduce their impact. Then when we're brainstorming options, there are some ideas. How can we do this somewhere in a different way? What would it take for us to achieve the objective? How could we break this down into component parts and maybe agree on each part? And what we're trying to uncover is the interest before we invent the option, not jumping into solutions before we have the underlying interest. And I'm working at the moment with a big pharmaceutical company, and they made the statement that prescription before diagnostics is malpractice. And I really like that statement. So if you don't understand what the interests are, you are going to put forward ideas that are not appropriate. So it's worthwhile taking the time to get the interest so that you can apply the options that are appropriate to those interests. So determine independent standards. This is a case where you have differing points, not differing, but opposing points of view. So what I said to you earlier was they should be objective, excuse me, they should be independent of the will of either side, and they should be used as a measuring stick that don't give any side an advantage that is not fair, honest, and just. So here are a couple of options, and I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on them, but you can review them at your leisure when you review the recording. The issue there is, which I like very much indeed, is scientific judgment. What does research tell us? What about the cost of material and time? What's an agreed amount for those things? And what's a regular profit margin in that industry? And so you can always find independent standards that are not dictated by the will of either party. I hope that's clear to you. And if you have any questions, I'll happily answer them when we get to the end. Then, knowing your BATNA, what's your best alternative to a negotiated agreement? And here we come to the very important thing is, what is a BATNA? And a BATNA is a backup plan. So what am I going to do if I can't get agreement with this customer? And I've got a classic example that I'm dealing with in my own business at the moment. And that is, I was working with a company also in the pharmaceutical industry, did a great deal of research and work on it, and we could not reach an agreement. Within days, another company approached me and we entered into negotiations, which I could use all the research and work that I had done for the other company, and I could absolutely do, we had one of the biggest sales we've had in our whole history, because we had done that work and we had a plan to be able to use it with other parties, not just the one party that we were dealing with. Again, it's a benchmark that says we don't want to give away the store. What is the best alternative? And if that best alternative is less valuable than our lowest price that we're prepared to accept, then we have to walk away. And then it should empower you, but not punish them. So that is what BATNA is about. We can spend half a day on BATNA because it's really important that you understand and prepare and plan for what you're going to do if the negotiation doesn't go according to plan. And there are quite a number of ideas that you can implement. So here are a couple of points on that. The first question is, what are we going to do if we have to walk away? What am I going to do? And then have a couple of alternatives, discuss those alternatives with your shareholders or stakeholders, and then select what your best alternative is. Then spend a moment considering what the other party might do if they walk away, and evaluate this. And for instance, at the moment with the whole COVID issue, a lot of companies are not very good at finding alternative suppliers for training, because many of the companies they do not have the capacity to offer either e-learning or virtual learning classes. And so they make a big noise about there being a lot of competition, but when you scratch beneath the surface, there isn't much competition at all. And that increases your BATNA, if you like. And then you also want to think about, who am I going to approach in that organization? What other departments or external suppliers could help me address that other party's interest, and so on. So we can plan very carefully about what we're going to do to make sure that we have a good alternative. And here is where I ask you to think about, in your world, what might be some of the BATNAs or best alternatives that you can revert to that give you power in your negotiation. Again, if you want to make notes in the chat room, you're most welcome. But we're going to press on because I've got around about 2 minutes to go before we get to question time. And so the
Time for
last
time at the moment.
issue that I want to touch on is making yesable offers. And again, there are some very bad habits that people have, that they either go in too high because they're arrogant and they hope they're going to make a big killing, or they go in too low because they feel they're in a weak position. And so when we come to making yesable offers, here's the range of the offers. What is the maximum offer that I can justify? And how am I going to justify it if I decide to go in at that price? The second one is, what is a satisfactory offer that I would get a fair return on the investment that I'm making in the particular solution that I put forward? And the bottom end is, what is the minimum that I could live with? And why would I want to live with that? And the reason why you want to live with it is because it is better than your BATNA. If the minimum offer that the customer offers you or your colleague offers you, then you're likely to want to accept it or continue to negotiate until you can get some kind of better offer on the table. But if it isn't better than your BATNA, then don't go for it, because you can always fall back on your BATNA. So that is the issue around the range of offers. And look at, when you're making an offer, make it easy for the person to say yes. So compare the status quo. What would happen if we don't do anything? Well, that's your status quo. And then frame the offer in a very positive light. And then sometimes it's useful to indicate some multiple equivalent of offers. So we can split the payment over X number of months. We can get your training organized before the installation, and blah, blah, blah. But you can bundle those in different ways that make it easy for the customer to say yes, because you've understood what's important to them, and yet you still get your fair value for what you've offered. So that's the little journey we embarked upon. And we need to have a conversation that around that offer. So start with, the purpose of today is to come and present you with an offer that will help us both get what we want. So then the important point is point number 2. For each of their interests, share their interest, confirm their importance, explain related components, and do a mini close asking checking question. So don't try and present the whole offer as one. Say, what we agreed were these interests. Here they are. Here's number 1. And you talk that through. You get agreement and you get a small yes. You move on to the next and you do the same. However many there are that you want to deal with. So when you come to the final closure, it's not a big surprise. You're asking for an agreement on the entire offer based on small yeses that you've got along the way. And that is an important part of your strategy of having an offer conversation. I hope that's important and interesting for you. So how do we handle resistance? These are the common ones, and I'm just going to put them up for you. How do we overcome when the person says it's not their idea? How do we get them involved in making sure that they have an ownership in that idea? Have we understood their unmet interests clearly? And it's not their fault, it's our fault if we didn't understand their interests. And then help them build a golden bridge to the people that they have to sell your solution to. So help them to be able to sell your solution to the internal stakeholders that they have to sell it to. And don't do too much too fast. Go slow to go fast. So get agreement piecemeal. So when you come to the final closure and getting final agreement, it is not a rush job. So that is the last point, is being able to say no. And again, we haven't got time to discuss them in great detail, but that is a little strategy that you could use when you have to say no to somebody. So look at it, consider it, put it into your own words and your own language, and what suits your particular style and company requirements, and do that. So move to the last one, which says propose. Look for solutions. Don't focus on what you can't do, focus on what you can do. So that's the little positive no conversation. And that is the journey that we've just completed. I hope I've opened your eyes to some of the strategies that you could use. We've obviously gone through them at a fast pace, but I hope I've covered them and at least given you some insights into what's possible. So you need to do at this point.
Frank, thank you very, very much indeed. That was absolutely amazing. I don't know about the rest of the audience, but there was many, many things that you suggested there. And again, I always take lots of notes when I'm listening to this. The world is full of negotiations. And if you wanted to learn how to negotiate properly, ask your children, because they negotiate with you all the time.
That's true. That's true. That's true.
Some of you will know my James, and he is a world-class negotiator with his daddy for sure. I do have one question that's come up here for you, Frank. That
Thank you.
From Glenn, who's in the USA, and he says, can you elaborate about BATNAs? Perhaps one or two examples briefly.
Oh, BATNA, yeah, sure. The classic one is that often what we assume is that let's take an example where we're dealing with a particular company. And again, I'll give you an example that's hot off the press right now, is that I was dealing with a division of a major international company, and we did a lot of work, and I felt we had reached closure, almost closure, and then at the very last minute, they backed off. But at the same time, over the period of the negotiation, I uncovered that there was another division in the same company that I could get them to give me connections to that were also interested in some of the ideas that I had. So during the course of the negotiation, I asked for referrals and I asked for connections to the other parties. And although my initial focus was on the first division, as it happened, that negotiation did not materialize. But fortunately, the negotiation with the alternative party, based on the good relationships that I had with the people, even though we did not reach agreement, allowed me to get an agreement with the other group. And that was a big aha for me, that don't be too myopic in your point of view. Look at what's possible, particularly in major global companies. And, I think to myself that I sit in Johannesburg and my biggest customer is Caterpillar, which has got its head office in Peoria. We've got a staff of about 11 people. They've got, I don't know how many, and they've got a turnover of $65 billion a year. Yet we negotiate with them, and we have done so for more than 20 years. So, and it's usually because we know what we're going to do and we know the people well. So as part of your BATNA is to make sure that you understand the people and build good rapport and good relationships with people. And if I have done anything in my whole career, that is the one thing that I pride myself on, is that I don't burn bridges, and I make sure that there's always another door opening when one closes. So that's there are many examples. Another BATNA would be that you look at having different, let's go back to the house sale issue, is that I just had the example of my daughter selling her house, and she was emphatic that she wanted to use one of her friends as the agent to sell that property. And it was pretty much disaster because she didn't have any option. That she gave a mandate to that particular lady, and the lady didn't do very much work, but she had a sole agency mandate. As soon as that mandate was over, she opened the situation, and that was that she created other alternatives, or BATNAs, if you like, that allowed more people from different backgrounds or different connection points to be involved in a potential purchase of the property. And within, I'd say, not even 2 weeks, the property was sold. So BATNA is making sure you're not dogmatic about saying, I'm going to do one thing. Think about all the options that are available to you, and make sure you've clearly defined. And if, like my daughter said, that was her desire. She wanted her friend to get the business. It was not logical, but it was emotional. And well, luckily it didn't have a long-term devastating effect, but it did delay the sale. So I don't know whether that helps at all, Colin. And if anybody wants to send me an email on my email address, I'll try and explain particular circumstances more clearly if I can. Thank you, Colin. Is there anything else that you want to cover?
Just another question just come up here again, Frank, as well, from a lady called Nawazi. Nawazi is asking, how do you most tactfully communicate your no at the assert step without negotiations falling apart, so that you ensure to get the proposal yes step?
Again, I come back, and most people think I have a particular bias about it. But my bias is that relationships count for a hang of a lot. And that the way you say no and who you say no to and under what circumstances you say no is dependent on the relationship that you have built up. So if you don't have a good relationship with somebody and you say no and it sounds abrasive, that person is likely to be alienated. But again, I think over the years of all the people that I have met in big companies like Caterpillar, gee whiz, they became friends, and we differed on many things. But when we said no, they understood there was good justification for the no, and vice versa. If they said we can't afford to pay that price in this territory, we trusted one another. And so again, when you say no, it comes back to the issue of trust and the issue of being honest, fair, and just in the way that you say no, and that you can justify that what you're saying no about is legitimate. It's not, that you're being obstructive. So again, as you can hear, I have a bias for the human side of negotiation. And again, I've negotiated with people from Scandinavia through Africa, through the whole of the Middle East, out to India and Vietnam and all over the place. And I have friends in all those places even now. And I've even got a guy in Mongolia that I correspond with, that we did business with some years ago. And so maintaining the relationships, and guess what? From time to time, those contacts come back because you've maintained a good rapport, you were honest, you were fair, and you were just, and they want to do business with you. And there are plenty of examples that I can quote on that one. So I don't know whether that answers the question, but it's no doubt that relationships have a huge impact on your ability to say no.
Absolutely. And I guess it goes back to what you said earlier, Frank, as well, about not burning bridges behind you. And if you ensure the no is professionally presented, then it still always leaves that door open for future
Exactly. And again, I've had customers over the years, and I'm sure all of you have, where they might have gone, because of changes in staff, they might have gone to the competition. But by and large, they come back.
Yeah.
If they know that you're there, that you're providing an ongoing service, that you have treated them fairly in the past, guess what? They come back. So yeah, you have short-term hiccups, but because of that relationship, and that's why I say separate the people from the problem, be hard on the problem, soft on the people.
Wonderful.
And if you do that, negotiations go much better.
Frank, just before we close off, got a couple of comments coming back here from the audience. Frank, thank you very much for the valuable tips. Great mythology to put into practice. Thank you. And a very keen approach stated with a lot of clarity, even though it was fast paced, and it is fast paced. It's a big subject to ram all the way into 45 minutes. So we very much appreciate your experience and sharing with us a lot of tips, a lot of hints, a lot of guidance, a lot of insight into one of the most important things in business, and that is being able to negotiate.
Sure, absolutely. And at the moment, it has become almost critical to every business, particularly negotiating virtually. A lot of people are battling with that, and getting the ability to understand who the players are. For instance, when you don't even see the people that you're negotiating with, never mind those that are not at the table. Is really a big challenge for many companies, and luckily we deal with that on a vast scale around the world, to be honest.
Amazing.
So thank you, Colin, for facilitating the session. We met the deadline in terms of time, and I thank you for your backup support and that of your staff. And I wish everybody well in the implementation of some of the ideas we've shared. So thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you very much as well, Frank. I really appreciate it, and have a good rest of the day. To my audience, thank you very much for your participation. I'm